We are going to start with the basic search operators, and we are going to clarify few concepts or especially the terminologies we'll be using. So we'll start with this slide, and then we will go through the operators like or, and so on, which are the booleans is with us how we like to call them. And these are algebraic notations basically that run on the database, and in textual database they come in very much handy, and this is what you will discover. So let's just look at this one quickly. The first slide that I'm going to ask you to pay attention to is some of the concepts of or the naming conventions that we will apply. The signs or the notations are like plus signs, minus signs. Symbols are like vertical bars. For instance, this stands for OR. So OR, which is a choice given or instructions given in Boolean. These are one of the symbols that replaces OR. So we call them symbols. So there's a difference between notations and symbols. The objects are either keywords or search phrases. So when we are doing booleans, I might just say that this is the object. You would know that it could be a keyword or it could be a search phrase. Then there is some logic that is actually the responsible for giving it a restriction or telling it what to do. So those are what we call the logical terminologies we use, and the logics as an example are, for instance, if, then, if this happens, then do that, this and another thing. So could be two objects connected. So there is a term we use, we call it conjoiner. It's A and D. Not is replaced by minus sign, and it is also a logic, and so on. So this is just conditions. We call them conditions that we apply, or what the Boolean applies are the conditions which instruct the text or your search queries to execute within restrictions. Then we've got textual data terms like object itself, which is keywords or group of words, gets declared, which means that it is given a name. This concept will come in handy when we are doing advanced search operators. Still, it is somewhat related to Boolean. So just think of these terms as some is a way of describing the search queries or describing a Boolean or its function. So the function of a Boolean is sometimes to parse or to identify or give a name to an object, and that object could be a text, and that text could be keywords or group of words. Declared object simply means that it is equal to, it's not greater than, is not less than, is declared as equal to. This is just basic algebra. Booleans are declared words, okay, that's fine. So anyway, this is
The search engines are programmed to respond to your searched words
okay.
and search phrases. With
I'm
the search
sorry about
engines,
that.
the
I don't
search
know
engines
where this thing. Okay. So the booleans are the types that we would be discussing with the queries that we put together. And these are three different ones. We call them A and D operator, OR operator, or NOT. What A and D stands for or replaces is with the plus sign. The OR is a choice between two terms or two objects on either side, with the option to at least find one, if not both of them. I'll explain the concept of R with more clarity as we go forward. For now, you can think of A and D, OR, and NOT as three basic booleans that we will use in creating our search queries. On NOT with the capital N and a capital O and a capital T. So one thing about the booleans is that they all have to be in capital letters. Otherwise, the search will think of it as a text and not an instruction set in booleans. Symbols and notations. Okay, it had to fall. Okay, never mind. Let's move. Keep moving. We just keep moving as fast as we can, and you have to just uh, let me know if there's something you don't understand. We can revisit it, or we can, I can explain it further if there is any ambiguities. So this is the easiest way of explaining A and D. A and D is supposing these two circles, we call them Venn diagrams, A and B, when they are joined together, or they are considered as equally important for the search to retrieve for you, we will use an AND between two search term or two objects, which in this case could be letter A and letter B, for instance. These are objects, meaning it could be keywords or terms. In between there is A and D, that is saying that please make sure that both terms are returned when the A and D is used. Now A and D can also be replaced by a plus sign, and plus sign is called a notation, as you know. So the notations versus the textual part of the query can be worked together only if the booleans are mentioned with the capital A, N, and D without gaps. And whenever you're using any of these booleans with the text part, not the notation, you have to make sure that whatever terms are attached to it or is supposed to be responding to it has to have a gap between the operator itself and the term that you have on either side of it. Usually the terms have to be on either side of it. You won't find any boolean that is not having anything on its left and on its right. So both sides would mean that there would be a relationship always for the boolean to execute. So now here is a boolean plus sign, and we call it notation, but think of it or consider it to be a text, a boolean text of A and D. Second one is OR. OR concept means that if there are these two objects A and B, and they are to be considered for search, notice that they are both in the same color, meaning they're sort of merging with each other. Does that mean that it is similar to A and D, or does that mean that both have to be found? So here is the answer and a quick definition of it. Whenever we say OR, it does not mean literally that you have a choice to find only one or the other, both falling on the left side and the right side of the operator. It also means that the search is going to first of all try to find both. If it cannot find both terms, it's going to look for at least one of them. So this is the choice, not where you are telling the search to find only one out of the two. So this concept has to be very clear. Even though literally with or we know that it is a choice given in the linguistic sense or in the sense of the word we use as or, but in the sense of how the search engine is looking at it is to find both or one at least between the two. So this is what or needs to be considered whenever you are creating a query with it. Then not, not is another word that you can use in between two different objects. Like A and B here means that anything that is going to be on the right hand side. Now these are some of the conventions, rules, standards, and they are not exactly the same in the sense in which they are used in all between three of them. They have different rules. Like not, for instance, you can only consider anything that you want removed to be on the right hand side of it. The not will not execute the left side object, which in this case is A. So whenever you want to eliminate something, you have to put it on the right side of it. On the left, there is null, nothing here. Now, another thing that the NOT would do, if you use a minus sign, it would equate it or consider it to be same as NOT function, except that when you use the notation part, you have to use it in a slightly different way. I would rather make some change here to show it not just in the way it's been set up, but by making a little bit of tweak here. I want you to know that the minus sign, why is it not letting me do it? Well, that's because it is actually dynamically programmed, so I can't change it. But let me just tell you how net NOT or minus would function. Supposing I'm going to use the notepad as a whiteboard for now. So let's suppose there is a query that says find mm, mm, let's say window panels, and right next to it I could either put NOT and say window panels, not Windows, not Microsoft Windows, let's say. When I do that, and I don't want the Microsoft Windows to show up in my search results, I'm simply going to put this term on the right hand side of NOT with one gap of one single character, and the single character gap will always be there by default. We are not going to we are going to have to make sure that there is a gap between any term that falls, irrespective of whether or not it attaches to it or functions with it. Anything that is on the left or on the right will have to have a gap of a single character. So one gap here and one gap here. Now the next thing is, if we have to replace NOT with a minus sign, I can do that. And by the way, I normally, when I do my search, I prefer to use notations versus the text part of it. Even in booleans, I found through practice and through experience that notation somehow seems to do a better job, and there is a less chances of error. So my minus sign is going to be right next to M, the first alphabet of the word, and there should be no gap in between. No, see, that's what I explained in initially when we started, is that it is just to give you a border, an outline, or simulate as if it is a box or address box, or where you put your search query in. It is meaningless. It has no other meaning except that it is just giving you an idea of the demarcation or the limits of how the edges or the corners of the search box is. So think of it as a search box. What I'm doing right here with the brackets is nothing but just giving you an idea that this is a search query inside of a box. So if it is a, let's is it difficult to understand? Let's suppose that this is the box, or this is the box where you put your search query, assuming. Okay, so for me to simulate this as a box, and I don't have to draw the box itself, the so I would just make use of these brackets to give you an indication that inside of these two brackets, on either side of it, is where I'm going to write my search query. That's all. So this is meaningless. Okay. So what is important is the minus sign. Now notice that the minus sign is going to be touching the first alphabet of any word or the search phrase that you want eliminated. Whereas in NOT, you saw that if we use NOT instead, we have to put a gap or leave a gap of a single digit or a single character between either of the terms on its left and on its right hand side. Same way, if the plus sign needs to be used, which eventually you will find out that we don't need that anymore, and I explained to you that concept as well. So a plus sign, whenever you're going to put a notation like plus or minus, it has to be hugging or touching or be attached to the first word that you need eliminated, okay, or added. The only exception is in OR, where we use OR as a Boolean operator with a capital O and a capital R. We have to exactly replace, if we have to put a vertical bar, that is a symbol which is replacing the OR. And if we put it, we could just put it in the middle. It's not going to be touching the M as we did before with minus and a plus sign. So when it comes to OR, and if it is a vertical bar, we have to leave a single character gap. Okay, so this is the fundamental rule, and I hope it's not difficult to understand. Now, coming back to the slide. Now, I want you to look at this example and try to see where the plus sign comes in handy, or the A and D operator comes in play, where two terms on either side of it, on the left and the right, needs to become part of your search result. So you want to ensure that both terms, in this case, just look at my pointer and see where I am, I'm putting my cursor. So John Smith and Jamestown. So this set of words with two, with the first name and the last name and the last word, have to be brought back, or it has to be returned in search. So I'm going to use A and D. So the condition is to bring back both these words. And if there are more than one, then here you could see that I can keep putting A and D as many times as I want, as long as I don't exceed the maximum character length that is allowed in putting the queries in the search box. So John Smith and Pocahontas and James Smith. So A and D is just the plus sign, you can assume. So this is a very simple slide, and here is the meaning given to this operation that happens. I want you to, but this is what you just saw earlier. Now, supposing I want to call this term, which is John Smith, X, and let's call Jamestown as Y. And similarly here, X, Y, and Z, but we are just going to look at the simpler example, X and Y, two variables or two objects on either side of it. The contextual relationship is created by A and D in this way. It is going to give a signal to the search that either, now you have to assume that this guy, this gentleman named John Smith is X and Jamestown is Y, so two terms. So X, so the context would be the X of Y, or it could be the impact of X on Y, or X similar to Y, or X inside of Y. Now, these are more of an algebraic concepts, and if I have to think of it as a logic that is built just by putting a plus or an and, it's just a relationship that gets created not just as a plus sign, but as is mentioned here, the x of y. It could be a bunch of terms on the left hand side, and it could be one term on the right hand side that relates to everything else on the left of it. So that creates x of y. The impact of x on y is again a logic of what the x, how the x would have a would change y, or how the y would change x if x is similar to y, or x inside of y. It's not as important from the search perspective, but from the concept or the algebraic concept, you can understand what A and D means in the Boolean language. Now, most important, and whatever we talked about so far about plus sign and A and D operator is something that's been depreciated in actual searches where Google insists that we no longer have to use A and D. And why that is what we are going to explain. Now, before I do that, I want you to have a better understanding of quotation marks, because unless you know why we use quotation marks and the importance of quotation marks, we won't be able to explain this slide. We will come back to it after I have explained what it means and what the quotations will do to a search phrase. Excuse me. So let's just look at this slide. And Bonnie, don't worry about the box here. We have not put the brackets on either side of it, but we have actually used a box to simulate a real box. And then the search term, the three words internet research specialists are considered independent single keywords put together. And you could see that they are identified by the brackets in red color. And of course, there is no real brackets that or real boxes in red color that exist in search. So this is just for explanation, so that you can identify with each box or within each box a single keyword. So here we have three keywords: internet, research, and specialist. If we have not put these three within the quotation marks and we do execute our search with three of them in this sequence where internet is the first word, specialist is the second word, and sorry, the third word, and research comes before specialist. So there is a certain order here. And we have not disturbed the order, but at the same time we have not enclosed all three wordings within quotation marks. So the search is going to think of each of these words as single keywords, not as a single search phrase. A phrase means that the wordings are in the same, they are going to maintain the sequence of those words to give it the sense in which it is actually put together. So a phrase can get a different meaning or have a different meaning if we start to reshuffle those words. So this is where the search engine likes to learn or know a little bit more on what you are intending to do. If you want all these three words to be returned as if it is a single search phrase, or you are giving the search engine, without enclosing them within quotation, you're giving it the ability to play with three keywords. It is no longer a phrase. Technically, for the search, it is a playground where the search has the liberty to either just look for research specialist or internet research, and it is not confined or restrained. Okay. Do head modifier tail apply in context of Boolean search? Yes, the first of all, the head modifier and tail are basically dealing with one search term, and not a single keyword. We are obviously, whenever we are creating a longer search phrase with multiple wordings in it, you do need to have the head and the modifier and the tail identified, because those are the keywords or primary or secondary keywords that are identified as the uh, as the preferred search phrases to find something. So when you do that, you are actually dealing with construction of a search phrase. You're not dealing with the construction of a search query. There is a difference between how you're going to be creative about a search query and add more restrictors or operators to it, versus a single search phrase, which obviously can be something that can be compared with the or it can be searched alongside another alongside another search phrase, and each of these search phrases should have been identified for modifiers, the head and the tail, and so on. So that selection is different from how we are going to use it to construct a search query. The search query involves operators, and what we discussed with everything to do with broad search or short tail, long tail, and everything that was involved in creating search phrases or creating search terms, that is only fixed and reserved for creating words or selection of words or the structuring of the words, not anything to do with the search operators. So let's just have that clarity in mind. So you can select, like I have internet research specialist here. If I want it to be separated or the words specialist to be a separate search from the internet search combined together, then we are dealing with two keywords or two sets of search terms, and in between we can create a restrictor which could be a boolean or advanced search operator. Whereas internet search could either be, because they are just two words, you can only consider them as primary or secondary. So supposing internet research is the primary keyword, specialist is interchangeable, or it is something which you call a modifier, then of course it has to be something which we cannot fix or relate to as a single search phrase. In fact, now you have broken that entire thing, and you have now started to be more creative with adding booleans to it. Now let's just go through this first, and we'll just as we get to understand how the quotation marks play a role in keeping your primary keywords intact and your modifiers intact, you would get an understanding of your own, or you would have the sense of where to identify, primary, secondary, and so on. So let's just keep rolling, and then you would get a sense of what I just explained. Now let's focus on creating a search phrase out of it. Right now we have given the search three keywords without putting these all three of them inside of the quotation marks. So internet research specialist, if it needs to be considered as a single search term, which needs to bring back exactly the results that has all three of them placed in the same sequence, then we have to enclose it within quotation marks. So we have to create this block, and we have to tell the search that bring me exactly the mirror image or the documents that have all these three words set together in the inside of the quotation marks, and it becomes a single search term. We call it a single search phrase. It's a phrase that is constructed. If it was without quotation marks, it could be split up into single keywords. Keyword is one word. Okay. Search phrase is bunch of words, more two or more than two words that are placed in a sequence whose sequence is not broken, and they are supposed to be returned with the exact same meaning, or this in the sense in which you have placed that phrase. So quotation marks is an enforcer. It tells the search, forces it to bring it the same way that you've presented. Basically, just mirror image of it. Okay. Now, what happens if search queries are outside of the quote and inside of the quote? Um, Let's suppose in the first instance it is outside of the quotes, then this is how, and of course, you can see that these are three colors we have used. It's basically splitting or identifying each of these words as separate or individual keywords, and they can be easily identified with the color over here. That is the only reason. Otherwise, they're all same, you don't have to worry about the colors in it. But let's suppose internet research specialist outside of the quotes. This is what the search is going to do. By default, the first action of the search is to really please the users by bringing what they want, and the first attempt would be to look for all three keywords together in the same sequence. If it cannot find that, it knows that it's not enforced being outside of the port, and it will start playing with these. One of the things that it would do is start reshuffling the words on the left and the right. And you could see that in example number two, the sequence changes. We'd still call them three keywords. In the third instance, it could just decide to let go of the word specialist and just pick up these two internet research as preferred or more popular or something that it can find easily for you. It will have that permission, or it would assume that permission you have given for it to look for these wordings in any combination it wants. So these two would be found, let's suppose, in the first 8 or 10 snippets. Maybe the snippets after that gets returned would have these two words internet specialist in it. So it'll start to reshuffle, make its own decision, and therefore the enforceability is not there for three of them to occur in the same way or in the same sequence. That means that it will start to distort the meaning. It will just kill the primary keywords. It won't have any distinction for modifiers and the tail and so on. So all that will get messed up. Now, how do we control that, and how do we manage it so that our search is precise and it is instructed to find all three words together? Obviously, we're going to put it within quotation marks. We do that, it will become one search phrase or a one search term. And there could be more than one search terms. If you want to use internet research specialist alongside OR that says find either this phrase or another one that you can create on the other and place it next to the OR operator, it's going to look for both of these in the same sequence in which it is enclosed or put together in within quotation marks. Now, if we start to another thing that as someone who's been doing a lot of research online and just talking from my own experience, I do a lot of manipulation or maneuvering with the quotation marks because it comes in handy when I find that my results are not coming as I require. Then I start to shift the words into boxes or within quotations. Like this one, for instance. In one, I used internet research as something that has to be mandatorily, it has to be returned with internet research being primary keywords, and they're enforced because they are within quotation marks. Letting the specialist leave the brackets and it stays outside of the brackets. I'm sorry, outside of the quotation marks. And therefore, what we have done here is given the search the ability to find synonyms or find better replacement uh, for the word specialist with reference to internet research. So internet research becomes our anchor primary or mandatory keywords, and specialist becomes a moderator, and if we add more words we can even put as many tail words as we want. So this is for Sharon. Yes, you Sharon had asked the question. So to say that anything outside of the quotation is where the search has the ability or the leverage to replace, find better alternatives, and for you as a researcher, it gives you a flexibility to evaluate the search results and see. A lot of times you're not using the correct terminology, or the words are not exactly favorable for the type of information you require, then the search engine would start using its own wisdom. And you give it a little bit of leverage and give it that flexibility. So this is how you do it. Another thing I would do is in second example, if I couldn't find internet research with relationship to specialist or any other word, I'm going to then try to look for research specialist and then put the term internet outside of the quotation mark. Done quite exactly what I did in one, except that now instead of specialist, the word internet is outside of it. So here you could see there is one keyword, this being a singled out word, or one that is outside of the quotation is considered a keyword. And there could be one exception that we will discuss in this third one. But for now, just think of internet as one keyword and research specialist as one search phrase. So practically, you have two objects or you have two terms that you can play with, or you could use operators like or, a, and minus sign, or whatever else is there in advanced operators you can use to start to give relationship, or give it a restriction, or give it a more accuracy. You can nudge it, and you can move it in the direction of where you feel that you could try it out and get your search results returned, and keep applying different operators in getting your search results, or refining your search results. Just doing one search is not a brilliant thing in the case of doing professional research. It is always something that you have to, I mean, it's not like it's part of the course, but I'm just, based on my experience, I'm saying that it is a very creative process. And you need to be very observant of the search results, because here you are playing with a machine, a huge indexes that is returning the results, and it is, and you are and it has a mind of its own. So you have to see how the search is playing, and how it is returning the results by keep changing or tweaking or fine tuning your search query structure to see if you're getting in the right direction. So it could be a process, and it gets refined every time it brings the result back. Here is one exception in number three. I want you to know the few concepts again. Whatever you have read so far, whatever your knowledge is. I know some of you would say that, oh, quotation marks, we know it just creates search phrases. It forces the search to find exact same search phrase. Good enough. But I bet you nobody told you that quotation mark has another function, where you actually end up enforcing words to play for you as individual words that are enforced, and they're not there as single keywords that are for the search to then combine with, or when it is left out in case of specialist or internet right here. The difference is that internet and specialist, like I said, could be changed by the search. It could be accepted, not accepted. It may become part of your results or not. So it is a big choice. But as soon as you put even a single keyword inside of the quotation, now you are saying that search has to find the word internet. It has to find the word research. It has to find the word specialist, only because you have put individual search terms or keywords inside of the quotation marks. So, but there is one technical difference in which we may not be able to call it an exact same replacement of putting three keywords as we did on top right here. Now, that differentiation is that even though they are within quotation marks and they are enforced, and surely they will be returned in search, but they will not occur in the same sequence, which means that research could be found in the documents or in the snippets as highlighted word, but it may not be exactly next to specialist, or specialist and research and internet may not be together, and so the structure of the entire phrase is broken. But there are occasions when we are not sure exactly which words to use, but we have a general idea. We still feel, especially in discovering exploratory type of search, where we are looking for leads, and we don't exactly know the correct words to use as one single search phrase, and enforcing it as a single phrase where you are not sure of the wordings in which they are to be placed, it would return null results. So you want that flexibility, yet you feel that these words are important for the search to return, then you can put them within quotation marks as well. So this is a situation in complex searches or type of searches which are very peculiar. Search keywords are not as common, and so on. So anyway, this was one other variations and use of the quotation marks. Okay, so in number three, it's just saying that the sequence remains intact, and that's all. So unless you have any other question, we'll just move to the next slide, and I will explain to you how the quotation marks are replaced by plus, or why the plus sign and the A and D operator is depreciated and no longer used in Google search queries. So for with this, we would just take a 5 minutes break. I'm going to leave this open for you if you want to uh, keep looking at it, and have a question in mind. You can ask it when we return. So I'm just going to take 6 or 7 minutes break today. Just have to make a quick call, and then when I return, we will continue and finish up everything that we have to do with the booleans. There would be one issue or it's not even an issue, it's just the timing. I think that we will go through the slides, and then tomorrow I want to actually apply or do demonstrations and do some queries with the browser open, and then I will be open to any type of creative queries you want, or something specific that you need to be found in in your searches. You can create that for me, and then we can sort of make it more interactive, make the session more interesting. But today we are just going to cover the slides which I'm supposed to be finishing and which are very important. And Bonnie, it's everything is in the book, and to ease up things for you. And I know that many of you are looking to sit for the CIRS exam. So if you just take my lead and just follow exactly the way I am explaining the concepts, you would know that these are the important topics on which you would get the questions in your exams. So for you to pass the exam, it is important. But to help you more, even to reinforce what I have done with the slides and my lectures, I have created another booklet for you, which I intend to send to you tomorrow. And this is in addition to your big book. Now, is one more thing you can do. Let's not worry about the big book of 500-600 pages. It's just you probably will get overwhelmed. So I have started to finish up some of the booklets, or some of the 5.0 versions, and added a little bit of information that is appearing in the slides. Let me just bring it up. Where is it? I think this is not the one. This is the one. I'm going to give you these booklets. So tomorrow what you will have is basic search queries with booleans, symbols, and notations. Especially for Sharon, she knows that this is a level 1 course, which is what gets you started in the web search learning program. That is a little bit different. It is only focused on the search query. So it has 3 levels. This is level 1, Sharon. We call it basic search queries with Boolean symbols and notations, if you recall. So this is the booklet I'm going to send out, and it's going to come to you in your email box. I won't be able to finish it until like maybe noon time tomorrow, because I need about that much time. And once this gets done, I'll send it over to you, and it will cover what we have done so far. Similarly, when we go to advanced search queries, I have the other book. It's not a book, it's a booklet. It has 50 or 60 pages. So I mean, you don't have to worry about it. The other one which I will send over to you is called search queries with advanced search operators. So while we are doing advanced search operators and all that, these notes or these smaller booklets would be more focused and gives you straight out of the slides information in a more elaborate way with more examples. Okay. All right. So, oh, by the way, Sharon, if I may, did you get something from the support today? a book and the PowerPoint PDFs? If you didn't, then I can just tell them right now before they leave the office. That's the reason I'm asking. Okay, so those are the two attachments. Fine. Just download it, put it in your record, but more than likely, I would ask you to focus on these booklets which I'll be sending, okay? And they will come in piecemeals. There would be this one, the advanced search, and then the third one, which is complex search queries. These booklets are the ones that cover 60% of the CIRS course. Rest is not that much volume. So that's all I have to say. So with this, I'm going to take a break. I have all back. We can start. uh, it's the end of my break.
This is Mitchell. I'm back.
Hi Mitchell, welcome back. Can you see my screen, Mitchell? Is that clear and fonts are good?
Yeah, but I'm probably not the best person to ask. I have a nice big monitor for you.
What a
Yes,
monitor.
hello.
Is this Bonnie?
Yes, hello.
Hey. How's
I'm
it
back.
showing on your side?
Very good now. Much better than the first night. Oh, the first night I had so much trouble. So tiny. So tiny. Now it looks good.
Did you have to change your machine or it's still?
No, I'm using a 15-inch MacBook.
It should
I mean,
be
I've got a 21-inch screen upstairs. I probably could attach the
video,
base to
yeah.
that. You know, I could definitely do that, but it would mean going upstairs, and it's a small room.
No, if it works, that's fine. And if the fonts are clear, I don't think you'll have problem with rest of the slides now. It is.
No, this is fine. The only thing I'm surprised is that it doesn't. It's almost like watching TV in the shoebox format. You know, in other words, there's a black border around the top and the bottom and the side where you are, and the border is about, I would say, an inch and a half on the top and bottom, and 2 inches on the side. So it's not filling in my screen, and I can't use my my trackpad to make it larger. But the words right now are fine. I could read them perfectly.
And I'm not sure how it works on the other side. If there is a way that you can get rid of that black area where the video is showing, if it can be minimized or something that you can do, perhaps. Maybe later you can figure it out, or maybe if I have a chance, I'll look it up as well. I know exactly what you're saying, though.
Yeah, it's like, in other words, your screen is the actual area of what I'm looking at is about, I would say, 10 inches, whereas my screen is 50. I would say 10 inches in diameter, but my screen is 15 inches. So the rest, the perimeter is black. The perimeter is all black, but that's all right. But as long as the words are big and they're fine, I could see it now.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
Bonnie, have you tried making it full screen?
Yes, I did. I went to the top where it's Zoom, and I did. I think there's a setting that says you could make it full screen, but then one part of the image of the screen is missing. It's like you see only a portion of it. So, you know what I'm saying? Like the video settings.
Yeah, because when I do full screen, I can see the presenter and I see just a big slide. That's what I'm doing on my end. Yeah.
I'm going to try it. I see these settings here, general. I'm going to try to do it maybe.
It's not under settings on my end. In Chrome, it's the little square box in the right-hand corner with the X that.
Oh, I'm not using Chrome. I'm using Safari. That might be the problem. And I have here original size 100. If I put it at 150%, it's huge, but then I lose part of the screen. So I have to, you know what I'm saying? In other words, the last word here is search phrase. I don't see that at all. If I make it 150%, it ends with the word quotation. So I can't do that. But I think maybe it's the browser. I'm going to try Firefox tomorrow or Chrome, and maybe it'll work better. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so we're getting started with the quotation still, because this is the most important concept, in my opinion, and this is
Mhm.
where we would be using the or moving the quotation marks to enforce certain words, and with the operators that we are about to use, um, we will have to put a lot of emphasis on quotation marks. So the concept that is very important, which it took me a while to discover, is why did Google depreciate the plus sign or the A and D operator? When Google says they have depreciated, that means that it is no longer um, acceptable, and sometimes you can call it that it is still works, but it's flaky. And then, of course, it's their own machine, their own system. So if they have given certain instructions, we try to go by it, and not to be, sort of try to be creative on our own. So, given the fact that A and D is no longer used, the only logical explanation is that if we put words within quotations, as you can see in example one, there is these three words that we are using. When we are putting it in within quotations, you know that these are enforced, which means air has to be something that has that needs to be returned in your results. So it is assumed that airs and certification and membership are having a plus sign in between them. Even though the plus sign means that you're trying to create a phrase of some sort with more than one words. But the fact is that when we are assuming that there is a plus sign in between, which is what Google tells us, that you have to assume that there is a plus sign, and with the quotation it is enforced. What I could say about the quotation itself is that it is a double plus in a way, which means it is not just the plus sign, but it is adding to the plus sign, so making it really come together, or it's being enforced. On the other hand, if you have something which is out of the quotation marks, like supposing aid certification and membership are outside of quotations, don't assume the plus sign yet, which is what is showing in the example 1b. Let me just get rid of it for a little bit. Let's just say that it is three words without quotation marks. They are not enclosed together as three different words, and they are the typical queries which people are used to putting in, like without quotes. So aid certification membership, you could see that there is no plus sign. We have not put anything in between, but Google says that there is an assumed plus sign. And why it says that is very clear from when you execute this query. For instance, if I put this in my search box, you can see it is showing. Let me just bring this in the uh, full screen. Here you could see that in this box, you could actually view the query that you have put in, which means that if you had three words that are there, and without quotes or with quotes, doesn't matter, it is going to assume that there is a plus sign in between. So let's suppose we actually do it to make it even more clear. If I take all three words, I copy it, I put it in my search. What do I see at the top? See, this is how query is getting executed by the search. It is sending it out and then getting a return. You don't have to worry about the different characters and notations over here and numbers and all that. Never mind all that is coming after the equal to sign. Just ignore this part, and then look at the query that gets sent out. The sign of where the query is being sent is denoted by a question mark followed by a small letter Q, and then there is an is equal to sign. That means that this is what you have sent, all this that is shown up till here. And you could see that Google is assuming that there is a plus sign between all three words, or at least two plus signs to connect three of them together. You could see there's a plus sign here, there's a plus sign here. And then when the search gets returned, you see something over here is what it is bringing. It is assuming that there is a plus sign. So the confusion for you might be that we have not enclosed it within quotation marks. So why is it thinking that all three of them has to be returned? The reason is that the first default action, as I mentioned before also, and it always occurs as a standard process by the algorithms, is that it is going to try to bring all the words back in your search results first. That's the default action. So even if you use or with the exception of a minus sign, that is an eliminator or something that is used to remove a word. So if it is or and for instance, or assume plus sign, it only means that it is going to try to bring all the words back in your search results. However, nothing is enforced here. It's still considered to be assumed, but not with a double plus. When I say double plus, it means reinforced. Okay. So there is one thing we think of as a plus sign, assume plus sign, which is still flexible, but then a double plus sign means that these are pushed into or inside of a quotation marks. I hope you can get that because this is the best way that I can explain it. In any case, without creating further confusion with this, the clarity is that over here you could see that these got all of these has plus sign. Now, if I put them within quotation marks, all of it together, let's see what it's going to do. Okay, so it only bought two results, which means that we had forced AIRS and certification and membership together, and there is less likelihood of these three words coming together as a single phrase, because now comes the linguistic part or the conversational part in which we use the words to create a sentence or a question or whatever, whichever way you are phrasing something. You are, and in a sense, trying to say it in the same way as you as a spoken words, because I mean that's all we can do is give it the best or phrase it the best we can, but it has to make sense for the search also, which means that if my search results are not as satisfactory, meaning that I only got two search results, and to me looking at this I don't see it to be very useful. The reason could be that AIRS certification and membership, they don't occur together because they don't make sense together. Certification membership doesn't make sense. AIRS membership probably does, but since you have phrased it by confining it in a certain sequence, the entire sentence itself may not be proper. So your results are not going to be as accurate. Now, on the other hand, if I move the quotation marks and I just put AIRS certification within quotations and leave membership out of it totally, maybe I'll get better results, because now AIRS certification makes more sense, and it is something which has a more likelihood of being found because it makes sense out of the fact that AIRS itself could be something that has to do with certification, and together it defines what you're looking for. But AIRS certification membership won't. So I'm taking the word out, membership, from it, and let's see what I'm going to get. I get 15,700 results only because I made a better choice of not only of the words, but well, I wouldn't say better choice of the words, but better choice of creating search phrase. The correct way of doing it is to put those words together inside of the quotation that makes sense linguistically with the spoken English or with the way that you express yourself. it has to make sense. So this is one example. I'm just sort of quoting from my own experience, and my frequency with which I use it is very much standard that I apply. I keep shifting words, I keep correcting the search phrases, keep looking at it, look at the the suggestions or the drop downs to figure out if I'm doing it correctly or not. Anyway, so this was one part of explaining why we don't need A and D anymore. Instead of A and D, you could think of it as if it is got inside of it, it has a plus sign which is in force. I'm just going to use my own logic. I'm putting double plus sign. Why? Because it is enforced being inside of the quotation. And then I'm using one plus sign, which means it should be acknowledged and it should be discovered by search, except that it is not enforced. Okay, so one plus sign assumed here. I'm not actually putting it in my search, but just to explain it to you, assume this to be single plus and assume these two words together as double plus or reinforced. Okay, now let's come back to the slides. Okay, so here is one example which is actually just explaining some of the ways that you can consider the search to be um, put together algebraically with the grouping, assuming. So let's suppose these quotation marks, if they were to be expressed in algebraic sense, think of these two terms, human clone and cloning humans, as mandatory for it to be found in search results. Then you can assume that these quotation marks are similar to the brackets or parentheses, which makes it into one single search term. And in between, there is an assumed plus. So what a single plus means that it is going to find both these terms but not together in the same sequence, or it is not one whole search phrase. So these are two phrases and it is going to look for both of them because they are within quotations and they could be found at different places within the text or content of those pages. So cloning humans can be there, human clone can be another term but not connected together, but at the same time it will be returned. So I could actually make a little bit of change here and I'll call it reinforced. So this is where I'm telling the search really to ensure that both these terms are found. Not in the same sequence again, but they have to be found being in the quotations. In the third example, I'm going to show you what is not to be, well, okay. So sometimes, when you are creating the search queries, and as I mentioned, you can keep shifting the quotation marks. Supposing the word cloning is important for me and human clone is also important, yet I may not be able to find or they could be, a repetition of the word humans. And if I don't want the word humans to be necessarily present alongside the word cloning, I'm going to bring it out just so that I can get better search results. So human clone is something which I need. Cloning is maybe a process or something that talks about human cloning, yet they are not to occur together. Still, I would think that cloning itself gives a broader, I'm just have to, it's getting a little bit warm here, so getting rid of my coat, excuse me for that. So if you can understand the concept, if you apply it in the scientific discovery or scientific papers or research papers, you may want to put something which is a subject, and then anything within that subject or within the topic could be another term that you want to use. And at the same time, you want to do away with something which may not be part of the title or the topic of that subject. So if cloning is the overall process or a paper I need on that, I'm just going to take human out, and then I would want it to have something that talks about human cloning along with other type of clonings as well, like animal cloning or things like that. So that's all this slide is important for, is for you to figure out or create a relationship by moving the quotation marks. Now look at this example. Here I've used A and D. Now, again, why I'm giving you some of the examples that actually are using something which I'm saying is not allowed or is not entertained anymore by Google, is just to show you that it does work, or this thing still works, but it's flaky, and it's not recommended. So I wouldn't want you to have to put this or use A and D more frequently. Okay. So if there was three search terms and I had to make sure that they're all to be found in there, you can see more than two, and we've got three of them. So we can put A and D, and we can put another A and D here to attach a relationship and ask the search to bring all three of them, except that when we compare it with putting these wordings without quotation and assuming there is a plus here, the results would still be the same. So you could see that it's showing 231 results and the same 231, and you can test it out on your own as well. But then you will find that there will always be slight difference in numbers. So that could be an indication that you may want to stick to one standard in which you frequently do your searches. So A and D in this case is just to show you, as I said, it still works, but it's flaky. Occasionally you will find discrepancies in your search results. Okay. Now in this one, I don't know why we keep getting A and D examples in the slides, but I wouldn't want to. Okay, so I guess this is where you can discover that there is a little bit of a difference in the outcome of search results. Like the numbers you could see, it's 6,940,000. Over here, it's 7,510,000. And we have not used A and D in the second instance. It's just a single character gap, and this is where we are assuming there's a plus sign. So there would be a little bit of discrepancies here. Now, but then it wouldn't matter much, because when you're talking about millions of search results and there is a few million results differences, you would never get to that in any case. So it's not like it's a huge difference, but at the same time, like I said, just make it a standard practice. You would still get somewhat similar results, but without having to use A and D, and without having to use a plus sign. Forgot to mention, but let me say that do not use a plus sign. Just like we are going to use a minus sign for NOT, when it comes to A and D, A and D still works, but the plus sign would never work. It's just it's not only depreciated, it's slaughtered, killed. It's no longer there. So that's the important part. Let me just turn on the fan. I think the heating is a little bit too much for me. Just give me a moment here. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so these are some of the examples, the ways in which we can use the quotation marks, especially in certain situations, which makes it mandatory or necessary for us to do that. Like the chemical formula, for instance, this is a formula of a chemical, and you could see that there are several stop words in between. So the quotation marks in closure means that it is a mirror image that search has to look for, and therefore anything including the stop words are entertained and considered. So when we have a comma here, a period, or a dash, and everything else that is a stop word, it's still going to be considered, and the entire term is going to be searched the way you have written it. So that is one instance. In the second instance, if you have to look for, let's suppose, an episodes or a season of Everyone Loves Raymond, for example, that is a series, and it has seasons and episodes, and I guess anything that you can think of, which is actually denoted by numbers, like season 1, season 2, episode 6, episode 9, and so on. You could search for it by creating a query like this one. So these are the examples that actually work, and I would also encourage you um, to practice it. But then while you're practicing, you get a better sense of how it actually delivers. And with that, you would come up with few questions. Maybe something doesn't work, something that you missed out. So, practice it if you can. For now, we'll just look at the way they are set up. In the first instance, you can, and we have three different ways of writing. So the first is that you're going to put that particular um, opera, what is, I think it's comedy. You have to put the entire name within quotations, and then out of that you could give it a single character gap and put 1-6. Now remember, when I explained to you that there are certain terminologies, certain power words, and certain conventions that is been programmed into the search engine, because now search engine has the ability and the collection of the type of or the way in which certain terminologies are written or certain numbers are set. So when you have 1-6, it doesn't mean 1 minus 6. What it means is that it is one or one of six, or no, I'm sorry, six part of one. In a way, the search is saying, or you're telling the search that I'm looking for season 1, part 6. So this is the way you're going to write it. And if you're unsure of it, you're going to put it outside of the brackets. And the other reason you'll put it outside of the bracket is to ensure that you're not creating a weird sentence which says everyone loves Raymond 1 minus 6 or 1-6. That's probably not going to be the way in which the search will find the episodes or the seasons. So this is one convention that the search engine knows, as it has learned. And the other convention is that 1/6 or 1/6, which also means 1/6 part of 1, or 1 is the main part. So anything on the left which is compared to the number on the right with any notation symbol which is mathematically possible or well known, like a backslash and the minus sign here. It only says to the search that it is that part, or this is the whole, and this is the part of it. So for season first, part 6, you can write it like this. Same way, if you want to enforce 1-6, and if you are sure that this is how the search is going to find your episode, you can put it within quotation marks. But normally I wouldn't do it, especially if you are not sure if exactly this is how it is going to find the episodes. If you're not getting correct answers, then I'd suggest just put season 1, episode 6. But for now, you can get a general sense of how we use certain numbers and attach a kind of a direction for the search engine. But while you're doing this, make sure there is not a single digit gap or single character gap in between the notations, symbols you're using, and the numbers that are on either side of it. So, no gaps. If you put the gap, it's just going to kill the query, it's just going to bring wrong results, and it is not considered to be one whole term. and the term is what the search engine is interested in. So the term gets broken whenever you put a single character gap in between. The third example, we have three searches. Basically, it is without putting the OR sign, you could see that I'm instructing the search to find for me these three terms in relationship to the reports. Even though the one in the middle says industry report, but still we are going to put the report outside. Reason being that I want market research demand report, I want market research report, but at the same time, I'm not sure if report is the right word, or maybe give the search the option to find an alternative word which would in the sense of how it is going to perceive it. Remember, anytime it is going to replace a word, change a word, or um, you know it is definitely not going to lose the meaning. It is going to ensure that whatever gets replaced has a similar meaning, or at least it is related to it. So that assurance is always there. So this is the third way of writing it. The fourth example has got A, B, C, D, and E, and this is where we have started to shift some of the quotation marks. And again, as I mentioned to you, we have to look at the outcome of the search results first before we start shifting quotation marks and put or move the words around. And when we are not getting the results we want, and even the wordings are the same and we don't want those to be changed, we definitely want to shift the combination of words to sort of imply or emphasize on certain search phrases or search certain terms. For instance, here in this one, you could see it says Steve Jobs important life lessons. Now, Jobs could be a separate word also, and Steve could be just first name. Important life lessons could be, three words together, yet it would sort of create confusion, and that can only be can one way of knowing if there's a confusion is to look at the search results. If there are far too many of them, it means that now the search has started to act weird. It's just throwing results at you, and that's not how we do our research. So we have to then first of all identify where we are wrong, or where we need to improve that search query. In the second instance, assuming, and I supposing I didn't notice that Jobs could be a name, or Steve itself is a separate name and Jobs could be another, you know could be a separate single keyword that talks about the actual jobs or getting an employment. So I missed out in B, this factor. Yet I put important life lessons within quotations because it was obvious. So I got 170,000 results, still not satisfied. I go lower and I try to put the entire search term within quotation marks, but then you would hardly find something that says Steve Jobs important life lessons. Why? Because important life lessons is the title given to a speech that Steve Jobs gave in Stanford. And so it is well known, three words together related to Steve Jobs, yet in a sentence they wouldn't occur as one next to another, like the name alongside these three words, which in itself is a separate title, and Steve Jobs is a name. So the best would be, and see, I only got five results. Getting far less results is also a not good, not a very good sign. So, which is the best result I got is shown in D, where Steve Jobs I put within quotations so that no confusion here. First and the last name. Is speech is in reference or a context I gave. I added a context by let's uh, call it a tail word. Okay. And then I put important life lesson within quotations. I got 51,700 results, and by far this was a better result out of A, B, C, D, and E. And E is again not the very best. So anyway, so this was the concept. Now some stop words are not recognized, as you know, but when we are posing a question, or we are putting up a question in search, and we find that the search engine is looking at it as a stop word. Like if I even if I direct it just in words, something that poses a question, and I didn't put a question mark, the symbol of a question mark, it means that the search engine would not know if it is a question or not, unless there is something that says it is a question. And you know that that's how we write the questions, and it's standard for anyone. But just because it is a stop word, we have to then direct the search to include that or consider it a question posed instead of just a statement or a bunch of words. So internet research I can put within quotation, and I can force a question mark, which means that now I'm assuming and intelligently applying something which, as you will notice here, is with reference to internet search. A question mark says that there could be a question posed or something in the text of those pages that has a question mark with relationship to the internet research. So I didn't have to put the entire question or put it as a long question. I just put internet research and questions about it, questions about internet research, or some questions that has the words internet and research together in the same sequence as I have put them within quotation. So I get, I keep refining my results. Some of the words that I use are stop words, like what is a stop word, where is a stop word, how is a stop word. So when I use what and I use it with the internet research and the question mark, this query would work only because of this question mark here, but it will ignore the word what totally. But supposing I want to put what, where, and how within quotation marks as single words, and enforcing it in part of the results, and assuming that these are with relationship to internet research and a question mark. Yes, there is a question coming. I knew there should be. What is a stop word, please? Stop words are some of the words that are ignored by the search engine, and this is 135. Let me go back and show you again. I think we did this yesterday. No, day before yesterday. It was in this slide. Stop words are the ones that are used to connect the sentence, like even adverbs, or but not the nouns, but words like becoming, of, in, me, the, for, your, will be, all in the red fonts as you can see here. There is a huge list of stop words, which is obviously not unlimited. We know what could be, just knowing from the ones that are identified here. You can guess also, like becoming, find, here, there, what, where, things like that. The These are stop words. Coming back to 135. Okay. So the next is OR, is what we need to work on. And as I mentioned to you, OR is replaced by a vertical bar. If I didn't, I'm telling you now that there is a symbol of a vertical bar that replaces OR exactly, in the same position or location as we place OR. So if there is an OR as a word used for boolean with capital O and a capital R, we can have that replaced by the vertical bar and it still work the same. And this is what you can see in all these examples right here. So what OR means, that at least one is required, more than one, or all can be returned, or all can be returned. This is more important to know. So it is not always considered a choice. The default action, remember, that's a rule of thumb for the search to return everything that is on left and the right of the operator. Now, advanced search operators are different. We will tackle them later. It has nothing to do with what falls on left or right of it. It is more to do with anything falling on the right side of it. And we don't have to deal with it right away, but it's little different. But convention for booleans, as I said, left or right. So here we are going to look at some of the examples to give you an idea of what type of outcome you can expect by using OR. So notice here that there is a single character gap in example 1, where we have two words, draw and the word paint, and in between there is a vertical bar. So what does that mean? It means that the search is now directed to find either the word draw or the word paint or both of them together, but they are not mandatory to be, they are not enforced as both to occur or to be found in your search results. Yet the first two words, which are stop words, how to, for example, now this is where you get real creative. If you understand what the quotation marks would do for you, you can place stop words in between, and this means that how to can pose a question and it can give you an outcome which directs how to draw or how to paint as a phrase, which you don't have to put together or put it as the two long phrases. You can, you can make it into a short, quick, uh, form of query without making it too lengthy. So you could just say how to, and then how to draw and how to paint. On the right hand side, you could see that what it is doing with the example that I've shown here, the first one, the occurrence of or the interpretation of search engine, how it is going to look at it or interpret it, is shown on this side. And this is how the other slides would be also. Typically we will keep moving examples 1 through 6, and on the right hand side it will show you the search engine perception. First thing search engine would do is look for how to with relationship to draw, or it is going to look for how to paint, or it is going to look for both of them. So if there is something that talks about how to draw and how to paint, it will find that first. If not, then it is going to find at least one combination of it. In this one right here at the bottom, it's just algebraic form of how you can translate these. I could see that there is a plus sign in between, and the equation is being made where draw and paint is put inside of a bracket or parenthesis that says to resolve this before and connect it with the main term outside of the parenthesis, which is, a general rule in algebra, that you resolve what is inside of the bracket first, before going out and attaching itself or doing computation for anything outside of the parenthesis. So not to worry about this part, okay, it's not even necessary. What you have to look at is how OR has played its part and how the search is looking at these options. Next slide has the second option, which says that here we have not put any of these wordings within quotation marks. Don't get bothered with quotation marks or not no quotation marks unless I tell you that it is necessary or not necessary. For now, the concept is to be focused on the OR operator. So let's suppose we have two terms, paleo recipes, on the right hand side of the OR, and on the left hand side we have one word which is primal. How is this going to look for the search, or how the search is going to interpret it? First, it is going to look for all these words, primal plus paleo plus recipes. This is conceptual explanation. These are not search queries. Search queries are on the left hand side. On the right hand side is just explanation of various ways or different combination of how they are interpreted. In this example too, you could see with the outcome or the search would first try to combine the prime the word primal with the paleo, or it is going to and leave out recipes altogether, because these are two words are not put within quotation marks. In the second instance, it can just combine primal with recipes. It could be just one word primal that it's going to find, or it is going to find paleo recipes, which is the type of combination that you'll have to sit back home and then figure it out and try to understand it more. But because the time situation, if you can get it right away, that's good. If there is a question, you can ask. Other than that, there would be several combinations with other, these examples that we have. We'll look at different ways of how these are structured and ways in which OR is used. You can, magnify this in a real situation of doing your searches when you apply your search queries using OR. So in the second instance, it is pretty much clear. In the third row, let's just call it a row. It's not identified as rows, but let's suppose this is the first row, this is the second row. Think of this as the third row. Third row is that you just have to think that instead of, if we had to put it within the quotation marks, we could have done that. So these are just some of the ways that you could have applied your search query. Even with the OR operator, you can put these singular words or group of words within quotation marks. In the third instance, you could see that these are two search terms, basically sausage biscuit and cheese sausage. So the outcome would be that it is going to first of all find both of them. That is why we have put a plus sign. Or it is going to find either one of them, sausage biscuit together or cheese sauce together. Not difficult to understand, basic. Then in the fourth example, why did we have to, I don't know, there's just, okay, anyway. Uh, don't want to make it confusing for you, but let's suppose it is recipes gravy sausage, and there is, assuming there is an or, it could be a vertical bar also. So never mind if I put or the vertical bar, it is still the same thing. Functionality wise, it is the same thing. So I'm looking at the wordings that are falling on the left of it and the right of it, except that there is a rule which the OR will follow, and so will the, well, I guess it is an exception for OR, from what I can think of, where it is going to look for and compare the terms which are falling closest to its vicinity on either side of it. So the first word on the left of it is sausage. The first word on the right of OR is biscuit. So by default, the search, even though it's looking for all of these words, but when it comes to the function of figuring out which one to put first, either sausage or biscuit, it is comparing everything and anything that is closest to it. If it was not just the word sausage, it could be a search term with two or more words inside of the quotation. It would entertain the ones that are closest to it, one on the left of it and one on the right of it. Even if you put multiple search terms or make it a longer search query, wherever you're putting the or a vertical bar, the first function is to resolve the option, or let's just keep calling it an option for now, because I don't want any confusion. Every time I get this confused by my students, they say you've said this before and you've said that later. So when we get into this kind of zone, I want you to just look for standard rules. And standard rule means that when I say closest vicinity, you think of it as a rule. Okay, I got a question here. So it appears the implied AND delivered the greater. Even if it delivers greater or less, thing is that Google wouldn't show you more than maybe 8 or 10 pages. and most of what is lost is in millions or hundreds of thousands of records. The question would be really is where does all those outcomes go, or how are that many identified as being found and yet they are not showing on the search pages? That is where the question should be. But to say that there is a difference in numbers, yes, there is, and there would always be, and as a rule, you would find mostly that whenever you are changing something, replacing something from word or symbol, or using a symbol and then words for money, say you're using a dollar sign, and you're using, instead of the word money, you're using price, you wouldn't get exactly the same results. So there is this thing about search engine, because it's got billions of records, it has a massive index, and it has algorithms that are sort of doing its own filtering. It is delivering based on its best calculation. So because it's wordings, it's not numbers, it's not definitive. Whenever you're talking about the words or the language part, there is in itself inherent limitations. Numbers are exact, direct, and it can be definitive, but the words, their combination, their priorities, ranking, and so many other things would certainly have an impact. And then when you are using one type of operator against another, or one compared to another, even if their synonyms or they're somewhat similar, you would still find the difference in numbers. But if it impacts you as a researcher for some sort of some sort of you could say creating a qualitative interpretation of it, it is subjective, it is optional. You can think of those numbers as indicators of some outcomes, but not otherwise. When you are not using quotation, does the word of the phrase take priority over the rest of the phrase? The word of the phrase take priority when you are not using quotations. uh, okay.
No, I meant the first word of the, I'm sorry to interrupt. I meant the first word. So recipes, gravy, sausage. Would the word recipes, since you don't have them in the quotations to make it a single phrase, would recipes be more likely to appear with biscuit than the word sausage?
Okay,
With
so here
biscuit,
is
because
that's a
recipe.
good question. It's a valid question, and it is something I probably forgot to mention. But on the other hand, let's just look at what these how the search is going to bring the results back to you. It comes back to the ranking theorem, the popularity of words, to the the words attached to a seasonal thing. So if there's clothing you're looking for, and if it is a summer season, you will get more returning back to you if it has to do with t-shirts versus warm clothing, or if the words together as some popular type of product, like Galaxy phone that you're using, it is something which is more popular, or there's a new model coming out, it comes out as a higher ranking, so it attaches with other words, and without having to put them within quotation marks. Another example which is very simple to understand is Donald Trump. So if there is any other person named Donald Trump, would we be able to find that person? Not unless we have the middle name changed. The outcome probably would be that all your search results would refer to the former President Trump. And then there could be instances where two words combined together are more popular versus singular word. So unless you put them within quotation marks, it's going to always show the precedence of one word to occur more frequently or more in your snippets or search results than the other one. So this type of intelligence which the search engine has built on its own comes from several factors. There's certain type of information which is used, or which is identified with the naming, for example, popular names together, more popular because two words are used together as being popular, not as single words. Three words together could be more popular, depends on the density of the word. And I believe you were there when we were discussing the density factor for evaluating the page ranking. When in the first few lessons, we were discovering how the search engine uses the ranking algorithms, how it looks at the words as their combination or as singular words. So the fact is that when you don't put certain words together, even if you don't if they are very popular together, you don't even have to put them within quotation marks. So if I use the word Donald Trump, I wouldn't have to put it within quotation marks, knowing that the search already thinks of it as so popular that it is going to assume every single time when you put first and the last name without having to mention middle name, it's always going to bring information that includes the president and not referring to anybody else. So no need to put them within quotation. That's how, in the same situation here, if paleo recipes is more popular than primal paleo recipe or primal or whatever you were mentioning early, then those words together, if they're popular, they will have the occurrence or precedence over the other one, or it would even leave out or single out a word that is not popular, or that could be a niche word which is not being searched, and it does therefore have no priority for it to be shown in the search results. So that's how the Google works. But we as researchers always try to make sure that we put them within quotation marks to enforce it so that the meaning is not lost, and anything that is definitive is going to get returned. On the other hand, we loosen the search anytime we feel that our results are not coming all right, or there we need to give more flexibility to the search. We are going to just do away with the quotation marks and give it more flexibility so it can return some sort of results at least that could lead you or nudge you in the direction of which words to use or what combination is best suited for it. So if that answers your question, we can. Is that
Well,
answering your question?
I was referring to this very specific example.
Which
In other
specific?
words, recipes.
Which one?
Example four.
Okay.
Example four.
Okay.
Because that's not in quotation marks. I wanted to know if the word recipes has priority over gravy, and if gravy has priority over sausage, so that everything on this on the left side of the or the recipes would be more likely to show up with biscuit than sausage would with biscuit.
So that's what I
what
was
I'm saying.
explaining to you, and let me just be specific with this example. For instance, if recipes is a word that does not occur or is not popular in searches in Google with gravy, and gravy sausage is considered together and more popular, then recipes will not be something that will have a priority over gravy sausage. Or if the sausage is more popular as a singular word and recipes gravy could be considered a recipe of a gravy as being less popular, then the word sausage will have a precedence over recipes gravy. So it just like I'm not the one who's going to decide which word will have a precedence over another. It's a mathematical thing, a formula that does its own calculation and gives a priority or a higher ranking or a higher weightage to individual words, combination of words, and sequence of words. So,
Okay, thank you.
so we cannot pinpoint and say the only way to find out is look at the outcome. If the results are showing that there is more occurrences of sausage biscuit together or gravy sausage together, and it is leaving out the word biscuit or the word recipes, or those words are coming in a lower ranking, then you would know which words are more, you would know that gravy sausage is more popular, or it is considered by search as a higher ranking. and we only we don't have time to go into deeper pages or different search pages. We just look at the first few results. If we find one word is occurring with more frequency in your snippets, you know that that is more popular. That's the only way you can figure it out. But the ones that we know of and which logically makes sense as being most popular, for instance, I mentioned to you Donald Trump, for example. If it is more popular together, you don't have to put them within quotations, and together it is so high value, or is considered to be having a priority over another name which has the two words Donald and Trump, but that person would probably never be found, or could be deep down in deeper layers of your search results. So the president Donald Trump will just keep coming up. That means that it is with reference to Donald Trump, and therefore it is popular, it is being considered, and it has such a priority that it is really burying the other Donald Trump, which who has the same name. So it becomes even more difficult to find that person. If it is a popular actor, or a personality that is very well known, has the same name as someone else, then if you don't put it within quotation, or you put it within quotation, still the one that will have a priority will be the name that is related to that personality, that who is famous, and it will just not find the other person with the same name. So this is how the search algorithms are programmed. So ranking popularity is what really dictates which word, or which set of words, or which phrases have precedence, or more given more importance, and have the occurrences in the first few pages, or in the snippets that are returned back. And that doesn't mean that the other piece of information, or the name of the same person, or the same um, combination is not found at all. It could be somewhere, in the 10th or 20th page. It's just that we are only dealing with, or we only find the ones that so we give it the best context we can, give it the best reference, so that, we are directing the search to find exactly what we are looking for, and not find something similar, or not find something we don't need. Bonnie, are you
Thank you
still
very much.
guessing, thinking,
No,
or
no, I'm good. I'm good.
you're good? Okay. You can always send me a note. I could probably send you a few things, but still, I would want you to wait till you get this booklet. If you want to go through that over the weekend, you should be in a better shape. Who is on Galaxy A21? Can you tell me who that? Okay, Sharon. Hey, okay, clarify. Okay, so we had to switch. Okay, so Sharon is on Galaxy, I guess, phone. Um, okay, what do I clarify? Can you, ask a question, the direct question? Because I tried to explain it, and I gave you the best reasoning I can. Are rest of you having a same problem? How about Mitchell, Mustafa, and Ruth? Um, are you having a problem with the concept I just explained? So I know who is getting it and who is not.
This is Mitchell. I was good.
And
Yeah, me too.
I'm good.
okay, all right. So laptop died. So okay, so that's why she's using her phone. It's a mobile. So just okay. So parentheses as opposed to quotations. Parentheses are no good, Sharon. They are not to be. First of all, Google does not entertain that. It is depreciated, not acknowledged. It is not something that works. It is flaky, and the parenthesis, if you want to compare apple with apples, the quotation marks has different functions. The parentheses you use when you have to do groups. So supposing you have two groups, like okay, so let me explain this. It's not a bad question. It's logical, and I think that everybody has a right to ask. And for those of you who want to know if parentheses are workable, even though it says that it does work, but if you apply it, we have some examples, but it doesn't work very well. So supposing we have a group, let's say Paris. There is a vacation that I want to. Okay, let me Paris or what is that? Paris and Istanbul. Right? So this could be one group, and supposing there is another group that says Estonia plus let's say and I want to compare it by putting an or sign. It's a vertical bar, okay, and then I have uh, Dubai plus, then I have Delhi plus Karachi. Okay, and so this is my search. Is this what you are referring to, Sharon? Just say yes or no. That's
Yes, thank you.
okay. So now you see what is happening with the parentheses. What we have created is two sets or two groups. Let's call this in the lower marking to explain it better. I'm just going to use as group A. Okay, this is group B. This is group C and group D. And now we definitely need a parenthesis. Otherwise, how can we compare these groups? Like with the or sign, what we are saying according to the instructions that are inherent with the or default instructions, the group that you have, or the term that you have, or single word you have on the left of, immediately left of it and immediately on the right of this operator, is to be resolved first before everything else gets into the play, or where the selection or decision needs to be made. So let's suppose the group B and C is what needs to be compared. Okay, and in group B, you have two variables, which means you have Estonia and you have Bulgaria. Now, supposing I get rid of the parenthesis, this is how it is going to show up, or this is how we can actually build the query if we get rid of the parenthesis. I'm just trying to show the importance of parenthesis and where the search falls short in giving it uh, making it the way we want it with the parenthesis. So supposing that this is how it should be ideally if we get rid of the parenthesis. Let's not consider these at the end right now. Make it simpler. So we've got Estonia, Bulgaria, Dubai, Sharjah. So even if we put it within parentheses, it is not going to group it together. It's not going to make it into a group B. All it's going to do is consider it as a plus sign and assume plus sign, not a double plus, just a single plus. So it is not making it into a group. Ideally, we want it as a group to be compared, but it is not making it into a group. The only way we can make it into a group mathematically, algebraically, is put it within parentheses so that both of these together are considered. So why this is happening and why it doesn't work, we don't know that. But if you try it, you will find that it is. I mean, it does work in Bing, but it doesn't work in Google for some reason or another. And lot of times it is flaky also. So this is a single plus sign, which means that now the search is going to look for either Bulgaria or Dubai as an option before it looks for Sharjah and Estonia as an option. What you want is, let's suppose, a trip that includes these two cities, and together they form a group, or there is one package B which takes you to Estonia and Bulgaria, and there is a package C which is for Dubai and Sharjah. You cannot compare it together unless you put both the terms inside of the quotation marks. So this will not work. You will find that it is going to bring, it's going to bring the it's going to break the parenthesis, split it into singular words, and then it is going to compare the first two words which is immediately on the left of it and right of it, and then it is going to look for Estonia, Sharjah, and so on. So all I'm saying to you is they uh, and then there is practical examples um, in the book also, and there is more than a few examples. See this one right here. This is about the parents. I should have looked. See, I forgot that we had this slide. Okay, we are running over time. See, so if let's suppose you were to use parentheses and you put red bird or blue bird as one group, or brown kangaroo and white kangaroo in the second group, and you want to use the parentheses, it's not going to deliver. Why? Because it is going to convert it into two, and there is explanation and more detail in the book also. So what will happen is that if there is multiple groups that you're going to create, you better use quotation marks and not use parentheses, just so that your search results are accurate and you don't have those preconceived or assumed outcomes, which mathematically is correct, but from the logic perspective and from the outcome of how the Google responds, you will be disappointed. That's all I have to say. Sharon, you there? You
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much.
okay? So do you still have a question? Since we are already 20 minutes over, I mean, why not?
No,
If there's,
no, because I'm sort of going to take it out of my repertoire, so to speak.
I see. Okay.
If it sort of doesn't really function,
Yeah, it
then
doesn't function.
I think I might be safe in discounting it.
Of course, I think you should, and you can safely do that. I'm giving you my word for it. We do the search like every time, every day. We're doing tons of searches, and we know for a fact that it is not only flaky, but it gives irregular results. And even if you use parentheses more than a few times, you'll find, and it's very peculiar. It's not like something standard in instances. Even if we're using flaky or let's say depreciated operators, this one is peculiar in the sense that for the same sort of structure of query, we're using parentheses. Every time you will get different number of results. So I don't know what freaks it out or why this happens, but if you read through even on the internet some of the opinions, recommendations, you Google it through, you'll find that people are finding it difficult to call it the kind of operator that you can rely on. It's got far less reliability than we'd like to think. So why use it? Why not get used to using the quotation? And once you get really good at it, you will find your way, or you will learn how to work around it. Okay. So I think with this we have to conclude, even though I had to finish a lot more. And I'm guessing, and especially for Sharon, I would say that you probably have to take few classes more. It looks like we are going in the zone where, and because these are live classes, the charm is that you can ask questions and not worry about the time or not constrain someone. So I don't mind, if we have to go a little bit overboard time wise, not just in a single session, but if there is more sessions we need to do, as long as you guys are satisfied, your questions are answered, it is more interactive, everything is clear. I would think that that would be an achievement we'd like to look for. So for Sharon, yeah, it would be a little bit more for you, and for the rest of the class, bad news. Yes, we do have to give a few extra classes. So thank you so much for the day. And there is a question coming to me. Let me see what that is. Yes, go ahead.
I just have a quick.
This is
So what you're saying,
fine.
what you're saying is, I'm sorry, what you're saying is, when you use the parentheses, it's not going to group the words the way you would like them to be grouped. Is that what the purpose is of when you're doing a complex search like this with several terms? It might, for example, mix up the words and put blue with kangaroo or red with kangaroo from the other side of the or.
What? Okay,
Is that
I got it.
is
I
that
got
what you're?
it. I got it. Okay, here is my answer, and that is, don't worry about parentheses. We'll find a web. I'll show you a work around it. How to bypass this barrier. It is a barrier. Barrier means don't use it. So I wouldn't want you to use the parenthesis in any sort of way, or just for you to not even get confused with what we just talked about or discussed with Sharon, is that we don't even want to work with parentheses. They are not functional in Google. They do work in Bing, but they don't work in Google. And Google is what you use a lot. Unless you're using Bing, I would think that we focus just on the Google part. It doesn't work properly. It doesn't really care much about the parentheses. So why even worry about it? Unless, and if you want to read and to practice and experiment with it, you're most welcome. But this is just like, maybe, something that, I mean, I don't want to even get into more detail than we have already spent time with. So all I'm saying is that I won't want you to use parentheses. And if there is groups to be and the reason we use it is to form groups that can be compared. But there is a way around it, and we will tackle that later when we get into advanced search operators. For now, just ignore the parentheses. Don't even think about it. If you are more inquisitive about using it, you can try it, practice it, or find more information. You would still find some information in the book as well. So I wouldn't want you to, this is not what I would ask for you to learn or to do. If you want to do it on your own, that's pretty much fine. We'll get there. We'll get around all the barriers that are there. Whatever we can discover and we can share, we'll do it together. Okay, so let's just call it a day. You guys have a great evening or great afternoon, and sleep well, Mustafa. It's way late in the night. I'll see you all tomorrow, same time. It's important, like I said, very important classes today, tomorrow, and then during the weekend. See if you can go through some of the notes that I'll send you tomorrow as well, for you to really work through on your weekend. Next week is going to be really intense with advanced operators. Okay, so thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Bye bye.